Welcome to this commemoration of Yom HaShoah. I will offer a brief, probably half-hour service in commemoration of all of those loved and lost. And then author and musician Sabena Stark will offer us some words and some videos about healing and moving onward. So we'll begin with Psalm 23, a psalm so many must have recited in those days. Mizmor David, Adonai roi lo echsav, b'inot deshe yarbitzeni, el memanuchot yenachaleni. Nafshi yishavev, nafshi yishavev, yanecheni b'maglet tzedek l'man shemo. Gam ki eilech beget al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha, Shivtecha umishantecha, emay nachamuni. Taroch lefanai shulchan, Taroch lefanai shulchan, Taroch לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, דשנתה ושמן ראשי, דשנתה ושמן ראשי, דשנתה ושמן ראשי, כל סירי ויי, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני, ושבתי בבית אדוני ליורך ימים. We are taught during the Pesach festival, you shall explain on that day, it's because I myself went forth from Egypt, which requires that in each and every generation, each of us must feel as though we ourselves had engaged in the struggle against Egypt and gone forth from her borders. As we were slaves in Egypt, so too we were together as Jews in the final solution. We were men, women, children, old and young. We were rabbis, teachers, farmers, townspeople, physicians, musicians, writers, school children. We were pious, free-thinking, Buddhist, labor Zionist, Hasidic, and Reform. Some of us didn't even consider ourselves Jews. After all, we were Germans, Poles, Latvians, Austrians, Russians, Dutch, French, Czech. But in the end, we were all there together. In Auschwitz, in Buchenwald, Dachau, Treblinka, in the ghettos of Warsaw, Vilna, Lodz, in the pits dug in forests, at Babi Yar and Ponari. Each of us here today was also there. And now we remember as we rise for the call to worship. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach, Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam v'oed. And we light candles in commemoration. The first candle with this candle, we honor all who perished during the Holocaust. A second candle. With this candle, we honor the generation who never had a chance to live. A third candle. With this candle, we honor partisans and resistance fighters who fought both spiritually and physically, as well as those who could not fight. A fourth candle. With this candle, we honor the righteous Gentiles whose humanity triumphed over their fear. A fifth candle. With this candle, we honor those who survived and who remind us never to forget. A sixth candle. With the sixth candle, we dedicate to all future generations with the hope that the horrors never will be forgotten. Creator of the day and night, who rolls back light before the dark and dark before the light, who makes day pass away and brings on the night, dividing between day and night. Blessed are you, Almighty One, who makes the evenings fall. El Chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam voed. Baruch ata Adonai Hamari Aravi. It was dangerous for us to meet at night. I shall never forget those meetings, writes Rabbi Leo Beck, describing evenings at Theresienstadt. We would assemble in darkness. To light a candle there, or even a match, would have brought immediate disaster upon us. We spoke about matters of the spirit and eternal questions, about God, about Jews in the world, about the eternity of the people Israel. In the midst of darkness, I sensed the light in the unlit room, the light of Torah. More than once, I could not see their faces, but I did see great spiritual light. ויעבדך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. And we join together for the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Voed. Ay, 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 ay. Through time and space, your glory shines, majestic one. Ay, 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 ay. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. You who live safe in your warm houses, you who find returning in the evening hot food and friendly faces, consider if this is a man who works in the mud, who does not know peace, who fights for a scrap of bread, who dies because of a yes or a no. Consider if this is a woman without hair and without name, with no more strength to remember, her eyes empty and her womb cold, like a frog in winter. Meditate that this came about. I commend these words to you. Carve them in your hearts, at home, in the street, going to bed and rising. Repeat them to your children. Or may your houses fall apart. May illness impede you. May your children turn their faces from you. Primo Levi, the Shema. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzar me'od, gesher tzar me'od, gesher tzar me'od. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzar me'od, gesher tzar me'od. והעיקר לא לפחד, לא לפחד כלל, והעיקר לא לפחד כלל. All of this world is a very narrow bridge, a very narrow bridge, a very narrow bridge. All of this world is a very narrow bridge, a very narrow bridge. And the essence is not to fear, not to fear at all. The essence is not to fear at all. Geschätza meod, geschätza meod, geschätza meod. Kol ha'olam kulo, geschätza meod, geschätza meod. Baruch eta Adonai, Ga'a Yisrael. A minute of silence. We rise as you're able, in your hearts or on your feet, the El Malei Rachamim. Malei Rachamim, Shuchein Bamromi, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanefei HaShechina, Mema'alot Kedushim U'Tehorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazirim, El Nishmot, El Nishmot, Chiyalet Tzva Hagana L'Yisrael, V'kol Eile Shemazru Et nafsham al kiddush Hashem v'sheneherbu b'shoah. Ana Ba'al harachamim, tastirem ketzeh כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותם, וינוחו בשלום. משכבם, ונאמר אמן. Aleinu, it is up to us to offer praises to the All. It is up to us to offer praises to the source of all, to declare the greatness of the author of creation, who gave to us teachings of truth and planted eternal life deep within us. As it is written in the Torah, the Eternal One reigns now and forever. And now we'll count the Omer. Today is the 11th day of the Omer, so we will count now the day that always features Yom HaShoah, our commemoration of the past. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat HaOmer Hayom Shnayim Asar Yom Shehem Shavua Echad V'Hamishi Yamim LaOmer. Today is the 12th day of the Omer, making 1 week and 5 days of the Omer. Today we honor Hod Shebegevura, humility and surrender within discernment and boundaries and our disciplines. And we'll turn now to the Mourner's Kaddish, where we must indeed surrender to our discernment, to our discipline, to our boundaries. And as we recite the Kaddish, let us keep in our hearts and in our minds all of those lost, all of those whose names we know and whose names we do not know. Lost in Auschwitz, lost in Lodz, in Ponar, in Babi Yar, in Majdanek, in Birkenau, in Janowska, in Theresienstadt, in Buchenwald, in Treblinka, Vilna, Bergen-Belsen, Mauthausen, Sachsenhausen, Dachau, Sobibor, Minsk, Domachovo, Warsaw, and all of those underneath the grounds now being so shattered by war, all of the unnamed. Let's recite the Kaddish together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayichon v'yomechon v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lalmei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach Yitkadal v'yitkadash v'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei dekudesha berichu lo'ela minko birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiram bi'alma v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'oko Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Osei shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'oko Yisrael ve'oko yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
May the heavens grant us universal peace and life for us and for all Israel. And may the one who creates harmony above please teach us swiftly to create harmony here on earth. And let's keep in mind, as Judy Chicago reminds us, we frequently encounter the attitude, even among our Jewish friends, that the Jews were willing victims. But that's not really the story as it is presented by survivors themselves. Instead, they describe the many forms of resistance, from small gestures that were, of course, death-defying, in that if they were caught, they'd be shot, to active fighting in the ghettos. Never say that you now go on your last way, though darkened skies may now conceal the blue of day, because the hour for which we've hungered is so near. Beneath our feet the earth shall thunder, we are here, because the hour for which we've hungered is so near. Beneath our feet the earth shall thunder, we are here. From land of palm tree to the far-off land of snow, we shall be coming with our torment, with our woe. And everywhere our blood has sunk into the earth, shall our bravery, our vigor blossom forth. And everywhere our blood has sunk into the earth, shall our bravery, our vigor blossom forth. We'll have the morning sun to set our day aglow. Our evil yesterdays shall vanish with the foe. But if the time is long before the sun appears, then let this song go like a signal through the years. But if the time is long before the sun appears, then let this song go like a signal through the years. This song was written with our blood and not with lead. It's not a song that summer birds sing overhead. It was a people amidst burning barricades that sang this song of ours with pistols and grenades. It was a people midst the burning barricades that sang this song of ours with pistols and grenades. So never say that we now go on our last way, though darkened skies may now conceal the blue of day, because the hour for which we've hungered is so near. Beneath our feet the earth shall thunder, we are here, because the hour for which we've hungered is so near. Beneath our feet the earth shall thunder, we are here. Let's take 1 minute just of silence. Now I'd like to invite author, musician, researcher Sabena Stark to share some of her thoughts and some of her work with this material and with the healing that is still so desperately needed. Sabena, I'll mute myself now.
Thank you so much, Haas and Evlyn, for such a beautiful service and utilizing this technology that we have that can at least bring us together no matter what's going on. I'm so grateful for what you do for our community. I want to thank all of you for being here. As many of you know, this service in particular means a lot to me. For 2 years, can you all hear me, by the way? Can you hear me? For 2 years ending in 1983, I attended a self-led group of Daughters of Holocaust Survivors. And through that group, I connected the dots of my childhood and discovered that my parents hadn't only just survived the Shoah, which I had always known, but I discovered that they had also survived Auschwitz and several other Nazi slave labor camps. Years later, in 1992, a friend of mine who knew about my history told me about an upcoming presentation. The presentation was unlike anything I had ever seen. It was personally moving, artistically engaging, and brought a more historical resonance and more complexity to my sense of the world. Dr. Armand Volkas, a drama therapist whose Jewish mother and father had also survived Auschwitz and other Nazi camps, spent a year leading a drama therapy workshop with a group of Jewish descendants of Holocaust survivors, together with German descendants of the post-war generation. And during that time of working together, they decided to put together a public presentation. Dr. Volkas is also the director of an improvisation group called Playback Theater, which is part of his Living Arts Theater Lab. During the year of the workshop, the participants met with the actors of Living Arts and Playback Theater several times to develop live interpretations of their stories. They continued to meet and develop these presentations over many years. In fact, they continue to do performances up until even this last week, 34 years later under his direction. On Friday, May 1st, 1992, Armin Volkas brought what would be the first of many of his presentations of Acts of Reconciliation, which was later named Healing the Wounds of History Project. I was in the audience in that original date in 1992, and during the past year, I decided to write about it. The original production was held in the multi-purpose room of the Lakeview Baptist Church in Oakland, and they wove together the participants' memories and original poetry, dramatic enactments of their stories, Nazi-era photographs projected on a screen that the actors then brought to life, and interwove with that short improvisational skits that illuminated the nature of victim and perpetrator dynamics. Through several conversations and meeting with Dr. Volkas and speaking with a number of the participants and performers of the original presentation, I was able to learn more about the background of this endeavor. The people I spoke with were generous with their recollection, and some shared their poetry with me as well. I also received a partial recording of the 1992 performance. The recording is greatly flawed. It was a video that was digitized and sent to me on a WeTransfer. And it included just 41 minutes, which was originally of a 1.5-hour presentation. But the stories come through. And I'm going to show you parts of this film tonight. I'm sharing this with you in honor of Yom HaShoah, because seeing this event changed me and has continued to inform my work. I want to thank you for attending and for witnessing these stories. And as a reminder, the recording and film is flawed. The faces and other images may at times look blurry. And that's the state of the film. It's not your computer. I have also prepared a transcription, and because of this, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have that I can answer at the end of the program. At the very beginning, you will hear Armin Volkas begin his introduction, and in it, he will reference the events of the last few days. He's referring to the acquittal of a group of Los Angeles police officers who had brutally beat Rodney King, an African American, and the verdict which set off the uprising of the Black community and 6 days of violence and destruction. But please know also that during this opening, the screen will remain black for about a minute while Armand is speaking, and the images will slowly come into view. I'm going to share that with you now. Can you all see a black screen?
Welcome, and thanks for coming. The events of the last few days have been enraging and frightening. Without drawing simplistic parallels between Holocaust and the Holocaust and what's happening now, We hope this evening can be the beginning, at least a beginning of a model for how to build bridges between people who consider each other the enemy. I don't want to give the impression that this is an easy task. I think Germans and Jews are linked forever by the events of the Holocaust, and our relationships might be forever complicated, but I think this is a first step. I'd like to say a couple things about the nature of this evening. First of all, my name is Armand Volkas, and I'm a psychotherapist and a drama therapist, and director of the Living Arts Theatre Lab. For a number of years, I've been leading groups both in Germany and the United States, bringing together Germans of the post-World War II generation, with Jews, most of whom are children of Holocaust survivors. I've been taking them through a therapeutic process using acting, improvisation, and psychodramatic techniques. This evening is the culmination of a year of work that I've been meeting with a group of participants for a year, and what we've been doing together is telling our stories, humanizing each other, exploring and owning the perpetrator in all of us, and asking ourselves, how do we remember the Holocaust? What is important to remember? How can we heal our wounds as Germans and Jews together? Finally, we ask ourselves, how can we turn our legacy into constructive action? We decided we wanted to share our process with the public because we feel we have something to say. A lot of what our process has been about is telling our personal stories to each other. What we want to do is share some of these stories with you tonight. And because the participants of the Acts of Reconciliation project are not actors, we have enlisted the help of the Playback Theatre Company, which is part of the Living Arts Theatre Lab. And those of you who have seen playback theatre performances before, which we do once a month, know that we normally ask for stories from the audience, which we then act out improvisationally after hearing them only one time. This is going to be different. Playback Company has been part of our workshops for the last few months, and I've heard the participants' stories before, and so they'll be only partly improvised. Integrated into this evening will also be other elements as well, which I think I'll let speak for themselves. And finally, what I'd like to do is dedicate this performance to my mother, Sabena, who at this time is hovering near death in the last stages of Alzheimer's disease. She was a resistance fighter in France, as well as a survivor of Auschwitz. And I think she would have approved of what I'm doing here this evening.
You Germans haven't changed for 50 years! It's always us now. No, we're on your attitude, your mentality. Too many Nazis in high places.
I wasn't born at the time.
We spent our whole lives dealing with the Holocaust. It's time you...
Well, I can't change it. I can't change history.
I'm tired of carrying this grief around. It's what you caused us to suffer over and over.
My whole life too.
I resent you even pretending you understand
I
what
want
we
to
went
become a
through.
normal country for once.
All Germans hate Jews. That's just the way it is. You all hate us.
I finally want to be proud to be a German.
The Holocaust could happen again in Germany easily. With reunification, you're
There's
waiting
more
for
to
it to
German
happen.
history
Your
than just
parents
those
were
12 years.
murderers. They were Nazis. Yes, I feel guilty. So what am I supposed to do now? Just because you weren't there doesn't mean you're innocent. You have to own your history.
You're not the only ones who did that kind of thing. Other people.
My name is Kevin. I am a Jew.
I remember when I was a child, I was afraid to go to summer camp because I had heard some of my family died in the camps.
No. No.
My name is Jürgen. I'm a German. I remember going to school in a town in Germany where people told me there once was a synagogue, and I was looking for it, and I couldn't find it.
Is it Rudy?
My name is Liz. I'm a Jew. I remember when my father showed me his souvenirs from the concentration camp, and I held his yellow star in my hand.
Oh, it must have been horrible.
My name is Susanne. Ich bin Deutsche. I remember visiting this old couple and my mother telling me later that the woman had been in hiding during the war because she was a Jew.
Here.
My name is Julie. I'm a Jew. I remember asking for a German-made Loden coat when I was a teenager and being told by my family we couldn't buy anything made in Germany.
No.
My name is Haas. I'm a German. I remember as children we had thin nylon coats. We called them Judenhaut, Jewish skin. We didn't know what we were talking about.
Like my yes.
My name is Mary. I am a Jew. I remember when I was little, there was a woman who lived in our neighborhood who screamed every time she heard a siren. My mother told me she had been in a concentration camp.
My name is Rudy. I'm a German. When I was 11 years old, I found a shoebox in the attic. It contained the correspondence of my uncle, who died in the concentration camp at Buchenwald. I had known about him.
What? Who was he?
Dad! You never told me. You never told what you needed.
My name is Philip. I'm a Jew. I remember as a child visiting my uncle from Germany. He was sick with cancer, and he didn't know whether his wife had perished in Auschwitz.
We'll never know what happened to her. Maybe she's gone.
My name is Ilka. I'm a German. I remember the silence around me about the Holocaust when I was a child.
Why won't anyone talk about it? I don't understand.
My name is Bernard Offen. I'm a Jew. I'm a Holocaust survivor. I was born in Poland. I had a family of 54 people. Only my 2 brothers and I survived. I remember a journey to Auschwitz with my father, where he went one way and I went the other way.
I remember when I was in 3rd grade in Hebrew school, and a teacher came in and told us we didn't have class that day, we were going to watch a movie. We were all so
I
excited.
remember I was in Germany in gymnasium. I was 9 years old. They called all of us into the auditorium and said, "We see a film."
And we all went into the auditorium and we were laughing and joking with each other and saying how we hoped it would be a funny film. And we were so excited that this film
We
would
were
be
all
fun.
excited. We were laughing and fooling around with each other and waiting for the film to begin. And suddenly, there it was in black and white. And
then the film started and it was all in black and white, and there were these people and they were speaking this terrible language I had never heard before, and they were big and they were wearing uniforms and black
I saw
clothes.
these people in uniforms and they said they're Germans and they had rifles and they were shooting at people who were naked.
And they were doing these terrible things to these small helpless people. And in the film they said the big people in uniforms were Nazis and the other people were Jews like
and
me.
they told us
like
they were
me.
Jews, the naked people, and we didn't understand what they had done. What did they do?
And why were these Nazis doing these terrible things to these Jews? People couldn't do such terrible things to other people. I couldn't believe that human beings could do this to other
I just
human
could
beings.
hardly
It was
believe
terrible.
that these skeletons were alive. They were not real.
These Nazis could not be human.
How could they be human?
They could not be human.
Philip, where does your story take place?
My story takes place in Southern California, in my home where I grew up.
Okay. I'd like you to pick somebody to be you.
Stephen.
Okay. So what happens in this story?
As I was a young child of 4, 5, and 6, there were many survivors of the Holocaust who came to our home in search of my father to trade stories. And I heard many of these horrific stories, particularly at the dinner time.
Okay. Why don't you pick somebody to be your parents? They sound important.
Christine for my mother, and Juanita, my father.
Okay. So continue with your story.
Many times after hearing the stories, I would awaken in the middle of the night. Many times I actually was still asleep and I was sleepwalking. And I can remember very well the configuration of my bedroom. It was kind of a horse-shaped room. There was furniture, bedroom furniture on 3 sides, and there were windows on 3 sides above the furniture and shutters covering the windows. And many times I would be screaming, having these terrible dreams that I was imprisoned in a concentration camp and couldn't escape, and I would be running up and down on top of the bed and the furniture frantically, rubbing my hands back and forth across the shutters trying to escape.
Would your parents comfort you, or what was their reaction to this?
My parents tried many times to comfort me. I had a sense that they didn't know where the terror was coming from. They tried to console me, to comfort me.
Okay. Why don't you watch your story?
Have some more soup. It's such good soup. I told you about the time when I saw my parents being shot and they fell into this big ditch and I saw it happen. You know, I think about it all the time. I don't know what I'm going to do. I lost my entire family. My sister and I were at the camps together. And thank you. She was sick. One day when I was sent out to work, I tried to get her to come, but she just couldn't get up. And when I came back, she was gone. I never saw her again.
I never saw her again. I never saw my mother again. I never saw any of my family again. Thank you. Oh, you know, I always appreciate bread to this day. I know what it's like to be so hungry. Thank you.
Philip, it's time for bed.
Okay, folks, I'm going to introduce a couple Julie Freestone and Rudy Haas. Julie is a Jewish freelance journalist who was working on a story about the drug war in Berkeley. And a contact suggested that she contact Rudy, who was a Berkeley police officer. Their childhood backgrounds created a lot of distrust, but it also brought them together. Years later, they married and wrote a book together called Acts of Reconciliation. Later, it was called Stumbling Stones, and it's a fictionalized story of their search for the truth about Bernhard, Rudy's uncle, who died in Buchenwald, despite the fact that Rudy's father was a high-ranking Nazi.
Don't buy anything in Germany.
I'm Rudy. I was born 8 days after the war in Germany. My father was a high-ranking Nazi official. He was in charge of the Adolf Hitler Schulen, and in particular the one in Sonthofen, where the next generation of the Nazi leadership was being groomed. My parents had been introduced by the Nazi Party to each other in order to have the proper Aryan offspring. So when you listen to me tonight and when you look at me, I look like a regular movie Nazi. Well, my father was a very stern taskmaster. And I remember him talking to my sister once, and he said to her that the Jews were responsible for World War II. The Jews, of course, were also responsible for the stock market crash in '29. And communism was a Jewish invention. I have also a peculiar part of my history, in that my uncle Gerhard, my father's brother, died in a concentration camp in Buchenwald. In 1967, I immigrated to the United States and I left my family. And so 21 years after the war, the Nazi regime finally was over for me too, and I was free.
The German language. I was born a boy with a name, with a nation, with a language. German. Deutsch. Can you hear my accent? What is your first image? Be honest. Nazi? Hogan's Heroes? Mercedes? Fat pink people at the Oktoberfest? Intellectuals with gold trimmed glasses? Bach, Beethoven, culture, Nordic, cerebral? Ich spreche Deutsch. No, your mother said we don't buy any German products. No Volkswagen, no cuckoo clock. I say, Guten Tag, and you hear, Achtung, Achtung, Achtung. But this is the language I cried in. I cried, Mama, Papa. This is the language I dreamed in, fell asleep to German lullabies. Schlafe, mein Kindchen, schlaf ein. This is the language I told my first girlfriend, ich liebe dich, I love you. For me, this is the language of love. Is it for you only a language of hate?
Where does your story take place?
Well, it's actually two parts to the story, and they both one place in Germany and one in France. And the first part plays in the little village in Germany where I grew up.
Okay. Why did you pick somebody to be you?
Steve.
So what happens in the first part?
Well, I'm out in the streets with my friends, and it's in the evening, it's dark outside, and one of my friends teaches us a song. His name is Thomas. And
is he important to the story?
He's kind of important.
I'd like you to choose somebody to be Thomas.
Christine could play Thomas.
Okay. So what happens to Thomas?
Well, he teaches us that song, and some lines of that song go like, the brittle bones of the world tremble because of the mighty war, but we're going to go on marching and the world will be ours. And at that time, in this age, the historical connection of that song to the Nazis wasn't clear to me.
Okay, so you weren't clear where this song was coming from, but did you have a sense about it? Or,
Well, it was a kind of fun marching down the streets, but the content of the song made me feel really bad. I felt so violent.
Okay. So how does this first part end?
Well, all of my friends and I, we're marching down the street singing that Nazi song.
Okay. And the second part of the story?
The second part of the story takes place 10 years later when I'm 17 or 18, and I'm on a vacation in France with my girlfriend, and we come across a Jewish graveyard, and I say, oh, let's have a look at that Jewish graveyard. I have never seen a Jewish graveyard. I've heard they're different from Christian graveyards, so we went in there.
Okay, so you went in there together?
We went in there together, but we kind of looked around separately.
I see. What is your girlfriend's name?
Sonia.
Yeah, I'd like you to pick somebody to be her.
Juanita.
Juanita. Okay. And a quality or a word to describe her in this story?
Beautiful.
It's beautiful. Okay. So what happens? You're wandering around this cemetery, and what happens?
We're wandering around this cemetery, and somehow I come to a place, and there's a tomb, big tomb, and on this tomb there's an inscription, and it says, inside of this tomb there is soap made out of the bones of Jewish people during the war. And I remember being shocked and asking, how can a human being so insane to do that? And I also felt shame because it was my people, the Germans, who had done that.
Okay. And Sonia's reaction?
I showed it to her, and she had the same reaction, shock.
Okay. So let's watch this story.
Are you ready to sing? Yes, it's a great song. It goes, the brittle bones of the world are trembling because of the mighty war. Try it again. Okay. The brittle bones of the world are trembling because of the mighty war. Keep going. Let's march on. Because today Germany is ours. It's the war. Come on, Jürgen. The brittle world are trembling because of the mighty war.
Soap made from Jewish bones.
Sonia?
Yes? Jürgen?
brittle bones of the world are trembling because of the war. Come, Jürgen, sing with us.
Anything else you want to say?
Well, that's how it was, and the shock for me was when I look at it again is they were singing the song of the brittle bones and realizing, that they were the bones again. It made me feel guilty.
Okay, thank you. Please, you're going to choose a color to describe the story. What color would it be?
Gray.
Right. Okay. Where does it begin?
It begins on a train. I was traveling around Europe by myself when I was about 21, and my train was passing through Germany.
Before you continue, pick something to be you.
Anna.
So you were in Germany.
Yeah, I was very uneasy knowing that my train was even going to be passing through Germany, and then a border guard came and was asking to see people's passports, and that made me even more uncomfortable just hearing the sound of his voice. And when the train stopped in Hamburg, I realized that here I was in this place where my father was born and where my father grew up, but that I couldn't get off the train. I was terrified and uncomfortable.
So
but
that's the first scene?
Yeah, and I realized that I wanted very much to try to go back, and so after several months of talking to my father about going there with him, we finally ended up making the journey together.
Why did you want to go back?
I wanted to try to give him an opportunity to show me where he grew up and to give him a chance to tell me some of his stories there.
Okay.
So the second part of the story takes place in Hamburg, where we were there together, and one of the things he wanted to do while we were there was to go to synagogue on Shabbat.
Okay. Pick somebody to be your father in this story.
Danielle. So when we went to synagogue that morning, we arrived at the building, and I realized there was a van parked across the street that was watching. There were people in the van that were watching us. And when we got into the synagogue, my father immediately went and took a prayer shawl and went into the sanctuary to pray. And I was looking around for the entrance to the women's section, and a guard approached me and said something very confrontational in German, and I explained that I didn't speak German, and the guard asked me who I was and what I was doing there in English, and I said that I was Jewish and that I had come there to pray, and the guard demanded to know if I had proof that I was Jewish. So I took out my passport and I said in Hebrew to him, I speak Hebrew, is that enough proof for you? And he said, sometimes it's enough. And I went up to the balcony, and there was no one there. I was alone, and I saw my father praying and looking very much like a stranger.
And so what did it feel like to see your father and to be in this synagogue?
I felt as though he had come back to a place that didn't belong to him anymore, and he seemed very lost.
And then the last part of the story takes place at Buchenwald, where we went together. It was where he had been a prisoner during the war. And when we arrived at the camp and entered the gates, there on the gate it was written, Jedem das Seine, which means to each his due. And it was very quiet there and very eerie feeling. My father didn't say very much, and I realized I couldn't ask him any more questions because we were too close to the place where all of this had taken place, and I couldn't ask him to tell us stories. So we just walked across this very barren field of gravel. All the barracks had been torn down. We went to the far side of the camp where there was a museum, and in the museum we saw some of the things that looked like my father's souvenirs. At the very far side of the camp, when we looked back, it suddenly seemed so far away to the entrance gate, and my father asked me if the place looked larger to me now because he remembered being so weak and tired that it took such a long time to cross from one side to the other. So we started to walk back, and there was a wind that came up, a very eerie, sort of mournful sound, and my father asked me if it sounded like people screaming. And we left.
Let's watch this story.
Look, Hamburg. This is where my father grew up. Boy, I have so many questions. I wonder if I should get out. I just wonder what it's like. I can't really see anything.
Passport. Your family name?
Rossner.
Rossner. Danke.
I can't get out. I have to come back with my father. I'm really glad that you finally decided to come with me. Strange to see your old town.
Yeah. It's not such a nice town, you know. Let's go to the synagogue for Shabbat. Baruch haba. Welcome. Thank you.
Ausweis bitte? Excuse me? Ausweis bitte? No, I don't speak German. I speak English. I'm an American. I'm Jewish. I came to pray. You are American? Yes.
Ihre Papiere, bitte!
Schnell!
Ihre Papiere!
I belong here! I'm Jewish. This is a temple. I belong here. I mean, mit die Berge Ibrit. Is that enough proof for you?
Sometimes that is enough. We must protect you now.
What does that say, Dad?
To each is due.
There's nothing left. There's no barracks.
It's all been dismantled now. Does it seem big to you?
Very.
you hear the wind? Listen at people screaming.
Let's go home.
Is there anything you want to add?
Thank you.
Okay. We're coming to the end of this program. I'm going to reintroduce Julie and Rudy, who are going to give us the closing section. And Rudy asks his new girlfriend, "Are you going to let our past rule our future?"
In 1979, I moved to California, and eventually I became a freelance journalist. I was working on a story about the drug war in Berkeley when I met Rudy. Actually, I had seen him from afar for years. He, in my mind anyway, was a Nazi cop. But during the interview, I was intrigued with him and attracted to him, and so we began tentatively dating each other. I couldn't believe that I was going out with a Nazi cop, two things that I never wanted to have anything to do with. And because I believed myself to be a great liberal, it never occurred to me that I could have any prejudices, and so I never believed that a German could be anything other than a Nazi.
So the first thing that Julie said to me when we met was, "So what did your father do during the Second World War?" I thought that was a kind of a peculiar introduction, and usually people say, "Hi," or "What's your sign?" But I had gotten used to this kind of reaction from people because of my sounds and my looks. And so I was still intrigued with Julie.
So we decided that we would go on with our relationship. And the one thing, this is very bizarre, but the one thing that made it better for me to tell people I was going out with a German was to be able to tell people that Rudy's uncle died in a concentration camp. What he finally said to me was, "Are you going to let our past rule our future?" And we agreed that we weren't going to do that. As time went on, we began to realize that we had actually a lot more in common than we had dividing us. And in fact, here's a symbolic example. These are our childhood teddy bears, which were bought for us in 1950 in Germany when we both lived there 8 miles apart.
So on our first date, which was a long walk on the beach in Point Reyes, Julie peppered her language with an uncharacteristic amount of Yiddish. I did not know whether she wanted to either push me away or maybe test me. But in any event, I had done a lot of graduate work in medieval German literature, and Yiddish is a medieval German dialect. And I was very interested because I understood everything and I liked it.
Hold on a minute. Okay, can you all hear me? I imagine you have some questions. There's also a video if you want to see more material that's actually on YouTube from another performance they did in the year 2000, and I'm going to put a link in the chat and 3 timestamps that I think are worth watching, 3 little sections out of the hour-and-a-half program. So I'm not sure how folks want to do it. If you want to raise your hands, or I can just try to improvise here and do the best I can to answer any questions or comments you might have. Don't all talk at once. Oh, okay. It says Ellen Rifkin, you raised your hand. Can you unmute yourself, Ellen?
Yeah. Hi, Sabena.
Hi.
You said how much participating in this had changed you, and I mean, we could probably guess what that might mean, but would you want to put it into words?
Sure. I mean, just briefly, what I can say is, and it's not like it fixed anything, but it certainly allowed me to start to see the shades of humanity and the commonalities between the second generation of Germans and the second generation of survivor kids. Many of our traumas were similar, and the secrets that we were all holding were similar, even though from opposite sides. So that was really profound for me. And I lived in Israel from the year 2000 to 2001, and I was kind of shocked to see how much cooperation there was between Germany and Israel. All the buses were German made, and there was this flow of culture and information. And I had to ask myself, how long was I willing to drag that painful hatred around and that stereotype around? And I had to start to look at those issues for myself and realize that, this war, just as the war we're experiencing right now, hurts everyone on all sides. And the other piece was that that I didn't have in the video was that there were these little mini skits that showed people dealing with the victim-perpetrator relationship. And in the skits, people changed roles, and you could really see how that piece is inside of all of us, that we all have the capacity to be perpetrators given the right circumstances. And it kind of broke down that concept of that there were those monsters out there, and that we were all good. Anyway, it's a lot more, but those are sort of the big pieces. Yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Sabena, someone was asking a question about Jewish skin. I wondered if you wanted to take that question. They didn't understand why.
Oh, well,
in the chat.
There was a question in the chat about it. So there's a reference to these nylon coats, and it was a hateful stereotype. It was a hateful you know, we have our own set of hateful words that we use for various products, which I'm not going to name, but I'm sure you all have heard them and know them. And this was one of those. So it's this thin nylon coat. It's the kind of thing we would call a windbreaker, I think. But they called it Jewish skin. It's pejorative, in other words. Shauna, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, I'm not Shauna.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. Rabbi Yitz. Hi. Sorry, I'm seeing a message.
My most significant response was how profoundly precious you are. And I don't mean to embarrass you. I mean to just tell the truth. Your work is incredibly important, and your presence is incredibly important. And I love you.
Love you too. And you've helped me walk through this particular hell more than once.
Blessings.
So never say that you now go on your last way, though darkened skies may now conceal the blue of day, because the hour for which we've hungered is so near. Beneath our feet the earth shall thunder. We are here.
Thank you, everyone.
Emily had a question.
Oh, okay. Emily, do you want to unmute?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I didn't have a question really, but I just wanted to thank you, Sabena, for bringing this to us and to say what several of us said in the chat, that actually the quality of the video added a lot to it, I think, in a strange sort of way. So it, in a way, had more impact than if it had been just, clear 21st century images. So thank you so much. This was really very powerful.
Oh, glad to hear that. You know, when you do something live, you get to feel the vibes and see the faces and hear the breathing, and you know how people are responding to something. So I was just trusting that, that this was reaching you and all of its grainy, corrupted form.
Sabena?
Yes.
Thank you so much for making this available to us. It's such a machaya, and I'm very grateful, as I'm sure all of us are. And you were going to put something, a link to something in the chat.
I'm going to do that right now, folks.
Thank you so much.
Now I just have to find my program. And here it is. And I have to find the bottom of the page. Which is here. Oops. Let's see. I'm a little slow at this. Okay, so first I'm going to put the link. And now I'm going to put the three sections that I would like to share with you guys. see if this went. Okay, looks like it's there. There's if you have your chat open, on the very bottom there's a little tiny thing on the far right, these three little dots, and if you click on those it says save chat, and that should save all these comments and links for you. The link is to the program that they did at Sonoma State during a Holocaust and Genocide annual commemoration event and conference. This was the one they did in the year 2000. And these were my three favorite vignettes that they did and stories. The other thing is, if you would like, I can email these to you as well. I'm going to go ahead and put my email. I guess I can just do that. You're all nice people, right? All right, well, if there aren't any more questions, thank you so much. Thank you, Evlyn. Your gorgeous voice and your spirit. And thank you everyone for being here with me.
Thank you, Sabena. Thank you, Evlyn. This is really wonderful.
Thank you, Sabena.
Thank you.
Mr. Kochech, Evlyn. Beautiful.
Thank you for all your beautiful music and teaching.